The less important something is, the more time we spend thinking about it. That is Parkinson's law of triviality, and it usually gets talked about in the context of business or leadership. But the original quote is actually all about money. Cyril Parkinson said, "The time spent on any item of the agenda will be in inverse proportion to the sum of money involved." In other words, humans spend more time thinking about chump change than we do about real change. And that mindset might be one of the things holding you back from making real progress with your money. I'm Ben with the YNAB team, and over the last 20 years, we've helped thousands of people break out of this triviality trap and make real headway on their dreams and goals. So in this video, I'm going to help you do that by explaining why we fall into this trap and how we can get out. This is sketchy advice. Money advice that actually flipping works. Don't ask me how many takes that took. So why are we so easily seduced by trivial things? Well, Parkinson offered a thought experiment. Imagine you're on a budget committee, and you've been tasked with approving three things: a $10 million nuclear reactor, a $400 bike shed, and $25 worth of snacks for the break room. Which one do you feel most equipped to approve? Probably the snacks, right? You probably know a bunch of different snacks that are available, and you probably have an idea of how much you could roughly get for the money that you have. What comes next? Well, probably the bike shed. Probably have some sense of what materials might be better or worse, and kind of what functions you need the shed to do. And $400 is pretty easy to wrap your head around. But then we get to the reactor. Easily the most important thing on this list, but also the hardest one to wrap your head around. You probably don't know a whole lot about nuclear reactors, so what materials should we be using? How much should labor cost? Where can we go for more of a budget option without causing a Chernobyl situation? But the reactor isn't the only thing that's hard to grasp. It's also that $10 million. How do you even conceptualize that amount of money? How do you allocate it and know that you've done a good job? So how's that budget meeting gonna go? Well, that reactor is gonna get approved right away. The bike shed is gonna prompt some discussion, but then ultimately get approved. And then the rest of that meeting is just going to be a war between heathens who want red vines and saints who want Twizzlers. $25 gets picked over with a fine-tooth comb, while $10 million just walks out the door. This is why every article you've ever read about saving money is full of these tiny little suggestions. You could save money by cutting your $12 streaming service or foregoing your $5 daily latte. But think about the numbers on those things. $12 over 12 months is $144 in savings. And yeah, if money is tight, that $144 could be huge. But for so many people, they're just giving up a thing that brings them joy in order to save an amount of money that's not even going to move the needle. I mean, if you buy a $5 latte every day and you stop doing that, you'll save $1,800 in a year. That's not bad. That's some real money. But what if instead you moved from a home that costs you $2,000 a month to $1,800 a month? That change would net you $2,400 in savings. In fact, you could go back to buying that daily latte and still save $600. And think about those two decisions. If you really like lattes or really enjoy going to the coffee shop, then giving up that latte is like a daily temptation where you're like, oh, I mustn't. But moving from a more expensive apartment to a less expensive one, that's a decent amount of work up front. But after that, it's all automatic. It's not like you're looking at $2,000 apartments going, oh, I mustn't. You're just living normal life. That's just your life now. So much personal finance advice tells us to really focus on the things that are hardest for us to resist, but also have really limited impact. They're easy tips to throw out there, and they sound like a pretty manageable change, and that's all well and good. If you do want to give up your latte to save that money, awesome. That's great. But it's easy to focus on these small things that you can do now because they're not necessities, rather than thinking about, well, what are some bigger lifestyle changes that could have serious impacts? Part of this actually has to do with how our brains are wired to think about numbers. Like, look at these two sets of numbers. Which one feels like a bigger difference? If we don't think about it too hard, $1 versus $500 feels a lot more significant, even though you're talking about a $500 difference versus a $1,000 difference. And that's because our brains just have a tendency to take shortcuts. If I glance at these two numbers really quickly, well, I know that one's bigger because it has more digits. But if I glance at these two numbers really quickly, all the relevant information is at the beginning, so I can kind of cancel out everything that comes after. Those kinds of mental shortcuts are why I was kind of hand-wavy about like $5,000 differences in home prices or college tuition, but I'll spend minutes staring at $12 toilet paper and $14 toilet paper trying to make the best decision. So what can you do to escape that triviality trap? The best thing you can do is sit down, and if you have a partner, make sure they're part of this, and just do a big game of what if. Question everything. What if we sold the second car? What if I moved to an apartment that cost this much? What if I stopped doing this grad degree? Crucially, don't start by focusing on everything bad that would happen. Start by focusing on everything good that would happen. What would be the benefits of doing this? How would this affect our lifestyle? How could that money be used elsewhere? When Maddie and I have these conversations, and believe me, we've had a lot of them over the last few years, we always like to use the YNAB app as a way of anchoring us to reality. YNAB has basically acted as our sandbox to look at multiple possibilities and anchor those to the reality of the dollars we actually have. And it's helped us make big decisions like cash flowing Maddie's master's degree or getting rid of our second car. And YNAB has given us the peace of mind to know that our plan is based in reality and the freedom to tweak that plan as we go without breaking the budget. So if you'd like to try YNAB, you can go to ynab.com/sketchy for a 34-day free trial of the YNAB app. After that, it does cost money, but most users make that money back 6 times over after just 2 months. So, worth a shot. This is going to be a spicy conversation. A lot of assumptions are going to get questioned. A lot of things are going to get thrown up in the air. And a lot of the changes you might make would require a lot of initial effort and upfront work. But the impact could be huge. And you might still get to go to the coffee shop sometimes. And here's a bonus tip. If you're comparing really big amounts of money, like looking at different homes or cars or whatever, don't just look at those numbers. Write down the difference and then think about all the things you could do with that money. Because when you're talking about 6-figure numbers, $5,000 doesn't seem like a lot. But you could buy a lot of pudding with that. Like, no joke. And you might have this whole big conversation and then realize, we don't really want to make any big changes right now. And that's great, because you know what you just did? You just affirmed the fact that you're living the kind of life you want to live right now. And you can walk away from that knowing that you are aligned with your own personal values and priorities. That's awesome. Too many of us guilt ourselves over $10 when $10,000 is just walking right out the door. So this is a wake-up call to work smarter, not harder, because you're a smart cookie. So get whatever snacks you want, paint the bike shed red, and let's build the nuclear reactor of your financial future. And hope it doesn't explode.